Hello and welcome to CLEA'S World. I am Clea, and today I'd like to share with you more of the information I've received from the 25th dimension during my last BQH session, which means Beyond Quantum Healing, and it's a type of qhht hypnosis technique. But it's done virtually, that's the only difference. But before we move forward, I'd like to ask you to please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. And please do give this video a thumbs up, that really helps me. And leave me a comment below to let me know if the stuff resonates with you. I'm always curious to see what people think. All right, so without further ado, let's start reading. I'm going to be reading questions I prepared in advance for the session. Lorraine, my hypnotist, will be asking the questions. And when I say me, I'm referring to myself under hypnosis. So the answers are coming from the 25th. Lorraine, okay, there is a psychic, and the name doesn't really matter, who says that there are hundreds of thousands of entities who become God. So God is many. Is there any truth to this? Is this what some other planets believe? Me. Yeah, so again, depending on the perspective you look at things from, you will interpret things differently. There is nothing separate. So even the idea of talking about many hundreds of thousands of entities that become God, yes and no. Meaning that if you look at it as God, as source, no, because source is every one of us. And every one of us, we are source. All of us share in source. It's indivisible. Energy is indivisible. So can you talk about hundreds of thousands or even dozens of different entities? No, not really. Because again, even us, there is no division among us. There's no separation. So there's no hundreds of thousands of anything really. If you want to talk about God, for sure, it means you are focusing on the fact that it's energy. And therefore, no, there are not hundreds of thousands of gods. That said, why do we say yes and no? If you do want to look at it from the perspective where you want to look at our division and our separation, then yes, each one of us is part of source. And therefore, if you want to look at it that way, yeah, we're all gods. Or maybe she's looking at it from the perspective of once you achieve a certain degree of consciousness, that you can create your own planets and therefore you're God. Sure. Again, you see, she's playing, she's using two different concepts. She's conflating two different concepts. She wants to talk about something that is indivisible, that is everywhere, which is energy. And at the same time, in the same phrase, she's talking about division, hundreds of thousands. What's hundreds of thousands? It means nothing. There's no hundreds of thousands if you're talking about God. But there is hundreds of thousands if you're looking at the individual level. So are we talking about individual level in a 3D way, or are we talking about energy? God is energy. God is not people. So you see, we understand why she's saying that. She's saying all of us, hundreds of thousands, can be God or can be aware of being God. Absolutely. All of us really, truly know we're part of source. We're made from source. But again, it's just that it gives the wrong impression. It gives the impression that a few select beings are able to be God and become God. And there is no God that is the energy of all and in all. And so it's a bit misleading, this phrase. But it's not, if we look at it, if we only take half of it from one side or the other, then it makes sense. And they were laughing here. It makes sense of how she would think of that. And again, we've spoken about her before. She has a remembrance of previous lives on alien planets, and on alien planets because they are aware of the fact that we are able to build dimensions, build planets, etc. So in a way, we are like gods. But this is it's a very 3D way of looking at it, if you want, because it's what we think of as God. We think that a God is someone who is able to create, planets and dimensions like it's a big deal. Well, it is a big deal. All of us in the 25th dimension, that's what we've done because God has been gracious enough to give us the means to do that. But we also create because God has given us his creative power for the simple reason that God creates and everything he creates is creative like us. So it's a very, very simplistic and really not, doesn't make a lot of sense what she's saying. Like you can look at it, you can try to understand it. We understand where she's coming from, but it's not quite the truth. It's very simplistic. It's a simplistic way to look at it. It's not an absolute way of looking at it. Lorraine, okay, Does the type of food we eat affect us or our energy in any way? For example, processed or GMO food versus veggies versus starches. Yes, me, yes. So it affects us to the extent that the essence wants to be affected. So we like to think a lot of the messaging is that GMO foods are bad for you. But if an essence doesn't know that GMO foods are supposed to be bad for it, then they will not be bad for it, will they? Now, if Clea ate GMO foods, she would probably get sick because she thinks they're bad. They were laughing. I'm not that extreme. They just like to use me as an example, like to exemplify things, which I don't mind at all. But is it because of GMO foods being bad? The essence doesn't have to be too vulnerable to anything. The essence is only vulnerable to what it wants to be vulnerable to. We've talked about this in regards to these things. We talked about this in regards to things like CBD oil. These are just codes. So if the essence thinks something is good for it, it will not be affected. If it thinks something is bad, if you believe that starches will make you fat, guess what's going to happen? Starches will make you fat. So no, I mean, it's not an absolute, but you can be affected by these different things. So yes, they will affect you if you think that they will. But food is just codes. It doesn't really matter what we eat. Just the fact that we're ingesting something solid, what we consider solid, the entire purpose of that is to create matter, is to keep the vibration low, as opposed to, for example, just living off of sunlight, which is also a code. So we hope we answered your questions. And guys, if you haven't watched my previous videos where we talk about the fact that we leave codes for ourselves and that we are creating this planet, basically the solidity that we ascribe to this planet is created by us eating food and doing certain things, then do go check them out because it's quite interesting information. Lorraine, Claire would like to know if food allergies or intolerances are an idea. Me, yeah, it's an idea. It's an idea that the essence wants to embrace. Lorraine, Claire's had issues where in the middle of eating a bite, she feels like she's drowning. She thought this was due to anxiety or the food being too dry, but what is really going on? I even talked about this in my book, actually, Untamed and Free, because this happened a lot, especially when I was living in Thailand. And I was getting to the point where I wanted to leave my ex-husband. But I was telling myself that everything was fine. So eventually I had to find out that he had been cheating on me forever with prostitutes. But you see, my essence already knew I needed to get out and this was happening. So it was interesting. So I was wondering why this was happening. Me. What is going on is that Clea gets very distracted. Excuse me. And when she wants to focus on us, but she feels the urge to do something, to take care of 3D, that she doesn't want to do, this is what happens. So every time she's forcing herself to do something, she will immediately feel the consequences of it. With food is very easy because very often she's doing this because, of course, she's part of the matrix and she's helping maintain it. At the same time, she doesn't want to be in that situation. And all of a sudden, she makes the food, she reacts to the food, but it's not really the food. It's the fact that she's doing something while she's focusing on a different reality. So she's trying to keep the matrix in place. She's eating the food, doing what she thinks she has to do with her body, what she thinks her body needs her to do. But meanwhile, she's focused on something else. And because she's not allowing herself to fully focus on that something else, which might be us or whatever higher level reality, she will react to the food because she's not focused on that. But meanwhile, she's trying. So basically, she's in between realities. She's trying to do both things at the same time. That's when she runs into this problem. I wanted to leave this in here, even though it looks like it's referring to a particular, just myself or a particular instance that doesn't even happen anymore. I wanted to leave this in here because the bottom line is that every time we are forcing ourselves to focus on something we don't want to focus on, whether it's food, where it's eating, or anything else that's maybe 3D, while we really are thinking, of something else that's, they were thinking about the 25th, maybe we're thinking, oh, what would I like to do in life or whatever it is, something will happen. For me, this was very obvious to notice, because I felt like I was choking. Even worse, I felt like I was drowning, which is weird. I wasn't even drinking any water. But I know that this is happening in other instances where I've had to remove myself from something I wanted to do something I really didn't want to do. And my goodness, it was bad. And so this totally makes sense to me. So I hope it clarifies a situation that might have happened to you that you were wondering, why is this happening? Lorraine, okay, thank you. Sometimes after eating a normal meal, Clea can't sleep and she started to be disinterested in food in general. Why is that? Me, same story. She's being focused on us. And when she's supposed to be focused on us, but she still has to be in 3D, and she will have a 3D meal, what we would call a 3D meal, they're laughing. She will feel the consequences right away because she's really, her focus is not really there. So really her body has trouble dealing with it, dealing with the food. It's a matter of focus, which dementia she's being focused on. Lorraine, is this why Claire sometimes acts bulimic? And bulimic is in quotes. Basically, sometimes I go periods where I'm totally disinterested in food. And sometimes I'm like, I just feel like I have to eat. And it doesn't last very long, but it's odd because, you kind of lose your appetite when you don't eat a lot. And I know this is not just happening to me because I've actually spoken with some of my girlfriends who have said the same thing. And I think Lorraine also says the same thing. So that's why, again, I'm leaving this in here because in case your eating habits are changing or something you find odd is happening, then I wanted you to at least have an explanation for it. Me. So she's having meals that make her, like sometimes she feels this urge of eating even though she's not hungry. That's exactly what's happening. She's trying to be in 3D. She's still to this day, and they had a deadpan tone here, it was hilarious. To this day, she's still to this day trying to be in 3D. Especially when she spent long periods of time with us or focusing on us, and her body just cannot deal with this anymore. Her body does not want to deal with this anymore. The fact is, whether Claire likes to believe it or not, we're close here. We're very close. And so she just can't behave like she used to because her body is just focusing. It's integrating different types of energies now. Lorraine, I completely understand that. I'm experiencing the same. Okay. After Clea's last plant medicine experience, she has forced herself to eat even when she's not hungry. And I did have a couple of days of that. I felt like I had to eat everything inside and I wasn't hungry. So it was very odd. Is she trying to ground or create matter to keep the matrix in place? I think you answered that. Me. Well, it's not so much create matter. She was trying to ground. And this was actually her body trying to integrate this. Yes, but it's not going to work, and it's already stopped. It's not going to work. Yeah, there's no need for this. The energy has been integrated, and I think it's time to give the body a little break. And again, this might seem like it's referring to my specific situation. I wanted to leave it in here because the point is our bodies, we already as essences are making the transition, and therefore our bodies will behave differently. So something that you might have not had a problem with before, you might have a problem with now. Okay, so this is just a little warning in there so you don't make yourself sick, because I was like, Lorraine. Okay, if we eat to maintain the vibration of this planet within a certain range, what is behind eating disorders like anorexia, bulimia, etc.? What is the goal of the essence with these conditions? Me. Yeah, so the essence is playing with something very basic, which is the coding that we all assume on this planet, that we require to maintain the planet in the vibrational range that's necessary to keep it in existence. So in this case, yes, this is really playing with other ideas, which is, what if I didn't do this? Or what if I did this differently? And that's exactly what anorexia is. You're still in just a code, but then you refuse to keep that in your body, and you're playing with this, saying, oh, what happens to reality if I do that? Now, not many people obviously play with these types of things because we consider them to be so fundamental on this planet. And luckily, so that's not a very popular idea, a widespread idea, but it does happen quite a bit. We all play, even without going to the extreme of anorexia or bulimia or other eating disorders. All of us, when you think about it, a lot of us have very strange, what you would consider from a 3D perspective, very strange eating habits. You might have times when you could eat everything under the sun, everything that you lay your eyes on, and there are times you're completely disinterested in food. Why is that? There are times when the essence is feeling the need either to be more in 3D or either to go ground. Because again, these are codes. We know what we need. We know what code we need to make ourselves feel a certain way. It doesn't even have to be food, but we're talking about food now, so we'll focus on that. And so this is what happens. The essence is playing with an idea and it needs something. And we don't have to make it happen through food. But of course, just like with plant medicine, we don't have to connect through that, but it's much easier to affect the switch because these codes, what we consider solid codes, like plant medicine or food, cottage cheese or yogurt or whatever it might be, whatever type of food might be, it's immediate. You will get what you wanted immediately. That's the beauty of food. But that's why a lot of essences, when they want to experience freedom from this, they have what we consider to be problems, disorders in 3D. But it's not, again, it's not something that is happening to the essence. This is the essence experimenting with something. Lorraine, thank you. Is that the same thing with people who like to eat ice, which is technically not food? Me. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, isn't that funny? Ice is not food, and they were laughing. And yet it acts like food. It's a code. So yeah, absolutely. That is exactly right. So these were kind of interesting questions I thought of because I've always wondered, and I've had friends who have had bad cases of anorexia, and to this day, like 30 years later, they haven't really ever recovered. And so I've always been very curious about what would have to switch in somebody's mind for this to happen. I can see from a 3D perspective, I know the explanations that have been given for these things, but I really wanted to ask the 25th about it. So, and I know all of us, I know I have strange eating habits. There are times, as I said, I'm not hungry. There are times when I'm like super hungry. So I'm like, why do these things happen? I see everybody around me. It's like nobody really has the habit of the 3 squares a day necessarily like we used to. So I'm like, what is happening? So I hope this was of interest to you. Please do give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. And again, thank you for watching my videos as always. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.